But especially with evolution and other things, which contradict what is written in Scripture, there has to be more investigation, and one has to be open-minded to examination of whatever evidence comes forth in order to really come to discernment on particular topics. But certainly we have been and are lied to daily by the mainstream media bobbleheads on TV, and I definitely think that's one of the draws of the alternative truth movement, is that people are learning different and better, and because of that they are seeking others that are opening themselves to new possibilities.
I think we all get the feeling that something just isn't right in the world. Welcome, fellow foilers, to the Tinfoil Hat Club, where we dare to discuss all the things we don't talk about in church. And where yesterday's fiction becomes tomorrow's fact.
When you've got a government that's lying to your face, controlling the information through the media that it owns, that's not a recipe for peace in a civilization.
Atomic. The electromagnetic waves affecting our planet.
Megalithic cyclopean sites.
Anderson Cooper, intern for the CIA.
Watchers in the days of Noah.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ben.
And thank you for joining us yet again. Wow. Okay, so tech challenges galore today. Chrome is turning into a nightmarish monster. I just want to say, shame on you, Google. But anyway, we are going to have a very good show today, a very important show for many different reasons. And I know that some are probably tuning in because of the title. There may be various camps there, but before we get there, I have a couple of announcements I want to make just to kind of let everybody know this is the advertising portion of your show today. So a couple different things. So you guys have noticed, normally this would be an HD Foilers only episode. So we're kind of opening up access today to let everyone get in here for this discussion. But the minute the show is over today, we are actually going to make this unavailable unless you are an HD Foiler member. So you guys are getting while the getting is good. And then after that, you're going to have to become a member of the show to help support the show if you want to get access. Now, if you want to do that and you want to support the show and you want to get access to all of our HD episodes, both past, present, and future, we are going to actually have you go over to our new platform site that is hosting our membership, which is the tfhc.supercast.com. So you guys can head over there, check out all of the different membership levels and options that we have available to you. If you don't want to hear ads anymore, there's a way that you can actually get the episodes ad-free once you go up to the regular foiler level to support the show. And you can actually drop the feed into all of your favorite players. And there's a ton of cool stuff that you can do over there. So the other thing too is you can always check back. And if you go to thetfhc.com/live stream, if you're listening to this right now and you're watching this live, we can see all of the chat feed coming in here. So everybody can see that or everybody on here, Zen, and both Ben and I can see that as we are walking through the show today. And we'll try to incorporate maybe some of your questions as we talk today during our chat. If you are listening to this down the line, maybe on Spotify, Apple, or several other platforms, you can always join us live at the time that we do these, if they are regular episodes, or if you become an HD member of the show, you can join us too at thetfhc.com/live stream, and you can see all of our upcoming shows.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget, head over to our merch store, thetfhc.com/merch, to take advantage of our Black Budget sale. All of the merch in the merch store is 20% off. And when you're over there, if you're not a member of the newsletter community yet, you can actually sign up for that and get an additional coupon sent to you via mail for an additional 20% off.
And the website shows all of our guests and
it does.
How you can link to them as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Which brings me to my last point. So if you want to know how to support the show, if you go to thetfhc.com/support, you can find out all the ways that you can support the show, including supporting our guests, merch, how to become a member, and various different things. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today. And he's having some tech issues on his end with the camera, so we are not going to have him via video, but we will have him via audio today. And our guest is actually the one and the only, our friend, and it's so good to talk to him because we haven't been able to talk to him in several months.
Yeah.
Zen Garcia. So Zen, thanks so much and welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks. I appreciate you both very much, and I appreciate also the prayers and the support that you've shown me over the course of the last several months with my going into the hospital for 7 weeks and being on a ventilator and having to come off of all of that. You guys were checking up on me constantly, and I appreciate that.
Yes,
it's good to be here with your listening audience and with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I might have been checking up a little bit too much.
I was going to say, it was our pleasure to annoy you. No, man, it's so good to hear your voice. So good to talk to you today, and we're gonna throw you back on the horse fast. But if you want to find out more about Zen before we get going, please do check out his website, sacredwordpublishing.com, and you can find out all about him over there. That is his publishing website. He's got several different authors that he helps support as well. So fantastic site and a great way to check him out and check out all the folks that he helps support as well from the authorship perspective and much more. So check out that site, sacredwordpublishing.com. So I know we talked a little bit before we hit live today with all the tech challenges. We kind of worked this in there, but we did talk a little bit before we went live. The most important thing that we are going to discuss today, and I'm saying this to everyone out there, the single most important thing that I think that we need to keep in mind today, because this is going to be a show about flat Earth. Two of us on the show are proponents of flat Earth, and I am the outlier. I am not a flat earther. I will just throw that here. But here's the thing that's the most important thing, and I think we all agreed to this before we started recording. The most important thing today is I'm willing to listen without losing my mind, because I think a lot of times people get completely shut down and they absolutely just say, that's stupid. How could you believe that? It's ridiculous. God's word doesn't say that. And then they just completely shut their brain off. And I think the thing that we all need to have probably learned by this point, if you're listening to this show, is the fact that we have been lied to at a very high level, and that has come from all aspects. It's come from our government. It's come from the church. It's come from social media, our news. So trying to find out exactly what God's word says in all instances is the single most important thing that we need to do. So while I particularly read the scripture and I do not subscribe to the flat earth theory, I am open to having my mind changed, because I understand that I have a lot of biases in there that maybe have come from areas that are outside of God's word. So I want to listen today objectively. I want to ask questions, but I'm going to be kind of representing the camp that maybe isn't in the camp of flat earth. I'm going to be the opposite camp today, because that's kind of where I am currently. But again, open to having my mind changed without, wanting to rip Zen or Ben's head off, because that's not what this is going to be about today. This is going to be about listening to someone who's studied this a lot more than I have, and seeing how they have paired this up with what God's word has to say. So I just want to say that out of the gate, because I think that is, and we all agreed, the most important thing. So
yeah,
absolutely.
There you go. So Zen, I know this is an area that you are very familiar with and have done a lot of work on, and probably the single biggest area that anyone who has taken exception to you, is it fair to say that this is the area where they have kind of been like, nope, can't have anything to do with that guy because he believes in this?
That's one of the many different areas that I'm attacked and vehemently opposed upon. But yes, I would say that flat earth and the topic of biblical cosmology is one of those that certainly elicits very strong opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you are you kind of agreeing with what I said in the intro there? Is it just because people have believed one way and they just absolutely vehemently refuse to even entertain the idea that God's word says something different?
Yeah, I think it's because we are now a culture where we support what the scientists affirm as truth for not only the cosmology, but for everything else, including evolution and large ideas like that. Um, but as especially with evolution and other things, which contradict what is written in Scripture, there has to be more investigation, and one has to be open-minded to examination of whatever evidence comes forth in order to really come to discernment on particular topics. But certainly, we have been and are lied to daily by the mainstream media bobbleheads on TV, and I definitely think that's one of the draws of the alternative truth movement is that people are learning different and better, and because of that, they are seeking others that are opening themselves to new possibility.
Yeah. And this is definitely an area where, like it's kind of funny how there are two things here, and we're not going to really spend on time on the other one, but there are two things here to me in my mind that seem to be tied together, which is the flat earth theory. And then the other thing too is, did we go to the moon? It's funny how to me it always seems like those two are tied together. And maybe I'm a little strange, or maybe I'm not. I'm sure there's a population that's kind of where I am with everything too. Of like, I don't necessarily think I'm probably starting to lean more towards we didn't probably go to the moon than anything, because I can get behind that more than I can necessarily the flat Earth side, just because I feel like there's more in it for someone to lie about that, especially when you look at the history of the time and you kind of come from that perspective of we had a lot to gain there from making it seem like we went to the moon. And I think now that we're starting to go back, it just seems like there's so much weird stuff around that event that, seems to be off-putting. And I'm not saying that we didn't, but I'm saying that I'm starting to think that maybe it's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility that we didn't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My dad said we never went. He would tell us we didn't go.
I guess the problem that I have so much sometimes with the flat earth side is, for me, I've never really been able to find the solid, like, with them behind it, like what's in it for the person that's lying typically. So I guess I'll start there is like, why, because obviously you guys feel differently than I do. What's the reason behind the deception? Is it just a satanic thing, Zen, or do you feel like it's multiple layers and more than that?
Well, I think the most important aspect to the deception has to do with what the Bible calls the strong delusion, and also what is now being pushed with regard to the ancient aliens, the fallen angels, the watchers, whatever you want to call them. It's the presence of the fallen angels in our time-space dimensionality, and what is now being pushed that they were our creators, and that they are coming to save us now that we have entered what the New Age calls, the Golden Age, or the New Age movement. And so the whole premise that the ancient aliens created us, and that they are what we believe to be Elohim, which Elohim is the true Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so that is part of the propaganda of even what is found in the Sumerian mythology, because Enuma Elish, which is the Sumerian creation story, it also affirms that we live in a solar system. And so it's very important, this topic. A lot of people ask me, as I'm sure they've asked you, why is it even important to study this topic, especially with its divisive nature on the community the majority, the mainstream churchianity. If it's going to cause such division, why is it important, and why should we continue to examine it as topic if it just gets people to lose their mind and to want to, like, as you said, lynch the other person.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it has to go to such extremes, but this is a very important topic for this time and generation. And the reason being is because I do believe that once you come to discernment on it, that it will also help you to realize that the whole theme of what has been laid forth and put forth as the Sumerian, the mythologies of that it was one of the outer net planets that caught Nibiru, and it was Nibiru being added to this solar system that introduced the Anunnaki into our world. And so those things are part of what I believe to be the strong delusion, and we'll talk about that more as we go forward. But the other thing that is important to understand with regard to what you had mentioned with the moon landings is that NASA themselves, they have a new project, Orion, where they want to not travel back to the moon, but they are determined to go to Mars and to set up bases on Mars and the moon as a way station en route to Mars, if that's what they are able to do. But they claim in their own words that it's not possible for them to go beyond the Van Allen radiation belts, even in this day and age, and that until they figure out how to achieve this, that they will not be able to return to the moon. And so, it's stated in their own directive by their own PR people that they're not able to achieve this now. How was it that they were able to achieve this, over all of those 13 Orion missions and Apollo missions? If they can't do it now, how did they do it then? So that's the first question.
Yeah. So, yeah. So it seems like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. And Ben, obviously you guys are kind of in the camp together here. So if you have a different spin, I want to hear your take too. Which it seems like what you're saying is a lot of the round earth theory that we've been taught, and that's the scientific thing that we've been taught and for however long now, is a product of the Sumerian Anunnaki as our creators story. Am I piecing that together correctly?
Well, that's part of it, but it goes back even further. I mean, we do have that whole mythos that supports that we live in a solar system. But you have to also realize that the Copernican, that whole embrace, the Jesuit embrace of the Copernican model for understanding the world, and the whole theme that we live, the Earth is one of 9 planets in orbit around the sun. These things can be just visibly with our senses shown to be impossibility, and we'll talk about that as well, because it's very, very simple for somebody to go out and to determine that curvature is non-existent. And the reason I say this is because, as I said, anybody can get a laser pointer, have a mirror on one end and another mirror on the other end, and use a laser pointer, even if it's over just 1 mile or 2 mile, which the formula for determining curvature is that it is 8 inches per mile inversely squared, meaning that in the first mile there should be 8 inches of curvature, but then after that it's 2 times 8 squared. And so it curvature should be visibly confirmed easily if it were to exist. But as I stated in my court case, which that's a whole nother thing,
Yeah.
you can go and you can again use laser pointers to confirm that curvature is non-existent, and that over a lake or a large body of water 2 to 5 miles there is no curvature. And so things like the people that are in Kauai in Hawaii, they're able to see Oahu at 100 miles distant, which there should be a mile of curvature between the viewer from one island to the other. And yet they're able to see the full topography of that landmass, across from them every day. This is a common appearance. It's not something that is, due to extraordinary conditions. Same thing with the Joshua Nowicki, the story of how he was able to see the city of Chicago, the skyline of Chicago from the shores of Lake Michigan at 60 miles distant. According to the formula, there should have been half a mile, over 2,500 feet of curvature, making one looking at the skyline of Chicago, you should only be able to see the very tops of the very largest buildings. And yet you can see all the way down to street level. Same thing with the Statue of Liberty. The people that are in New York, Philadelphia, New Jersey, and other places surrounding the Statue of Liberty, you can see it in excess of 60 miles distant as well. And in ancient times, the navigators, they were able to see lighthouses sometimes at 200 miles distant, which is an extraordinary, the fact that they were able to do that is just remarkable. And again, it shows that if there were true curvature, according to the formula that science gives us for determining that, which, they say that the Earth has a diameter of 24,901 miles. And so when you break that down, according to the mathematics, it is the 8 inches per mile inversely squared. And so, and the stats and the statistics that I'm giving you for determining curvature can be confirmed just by going and looking up the formula and seeing how much curvature should be in existence at spans from 1 mile to a distance of 100 miles. And so these kind of things confirm visually and with our senses that, again, curvature is non-existent. And anybody can do this with a laser pointer and by doing a quick experiment, which has been repeated now probably hundreds of times by many individuals, myself and my son included. We were able to do this at a place here by my house, Fort Yargo, which has a lake several miles across. And so these kind of things, again, affirm the non-existent nature of curvature. And we're not even talking about the fact that science claims that the Earth is moving in excess of 1,037 miles an hour, which is faster than the speed of sound, and also a bullet shot from a pistol. I mean, these are extraordinary speeds that they are claiming that the Earth is moving at, these rapid rates of speed. And they say that the sun is also circling the center of the Milky Way, and that the entire Milky Way galaxy is also moving in circle around some universal center. And the speeds that they give for these movements are in excess of 1,000,000 miles an hour, which is extraordinary, especially when you consider parallax and the fact that the stars and the constellations have been fixed for thousands of years, and navigators have been using Polaris as the one fixed star of the celestial evening, the celestial night, to navigate and to determine where true north is. And in honesty, when you examine what Enoch says, and that was my introduction to this particular topic, there's a portion of the book of Enoch called the Book on the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries that reading it, because you guys know I study the extra biblical books and have
Just a little
for
bit.
many years, yes, many decades. But there was this portion of the manuscript never made sense to me. And the reason being is because Enoch describes the motions of the luminaries as moving from east to west and then back north and then back east, which is a circle. And when I came to the understanding that indeed the earth was and is a circle inscribed upon a square, and that it is according to the word of the Most High, it's fixed, stationary, and non-moving. There's 3 confirming witnesses which declare it as such in Psalms and Proverbs and in Isaiah and other places. And so the Most High says that the earth was created first, even before the luminaries, which the luminaries were created on the 4th day, and they were placed into and under what is the firmament of the earth, which is a whole nother can of worms to open up with regard to this topic. And we can go into that as well at some point. But let me give you guys a chance to respond.
I will say, Zen, a couple years ago, we were visiting, well, we were on vacation in Northern California. We were 5 minutes from Oregon. That's how far north in California we were. And we were right on the beach. And I was watching the sunset, and it did not set in the west. The sun set in the north, straight north. It was setting. It would look like it was setting over Canada, where we were at. And I was just like, huh, well, it would only work on a flat earth.
Do you remember what time of year it was?
In the summer.
It was in the summertime.
So it was like 9-10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, because the one thing that we can all agree on, it's just a matter of how we get there, is we can watch how the sun operates.
Yeah.
We can watch how the moon operates. And it was funny because I got into some research yesterday, not about this topic, but about something else that I've been working on. And it drew me back to ancient apocalypse again. And I was specifically looking in Göbekli Tepe and some of that stuff, and then the episode after that, because the mounds in America and all these places we find are always celestially aligned. We've talked about that several times, to either the solstices or the equinoxes. And during I want to say it is the summer and winter solstice. Whatever. Thank you, solstice. You can see over time when you take a time lapse, what happens is, to the ancients, the sun would move, and then it would stop for like 3 days in the same place, and then it would start to move back.
Yeah.
Because of whatever the orbit of everything was. And it's interesting. I wrote down a lot of notes, and I don't want anyone to think the questions that I asked today, I'm not trying to be combative. It's literally, I just want to throw these out there because for me, I have these questions. So I'm selfishly asking for myself. And we have a lot of ground to cover. So I want to try to be as conscientious with our time and with Zen's time as possible. So I probably won't even get to all of them, but under the flat earth theory, is the sun and the moon flat as well?
No, they're not. And let me also state, I think it's very important what you just said with regard to the observations that we are able to make, and also that the ancients were able to align the megalithic structures that
Yes.
they created according to the solstices, and that these movements and these markings are still current in this day and age. And what is important about that, as I wrote in my ninth book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, is that Enoch also describes this motion, this movement, and he describes and attributes the movement of the luminaries and the planets. He includes the sun and the moon as part of these wandering stars. And so let me just share this one passage, and then I'll explain what he's saying. He says in chapter 74, verses 7 through 9, "And the days Uriel showed me, the angel whom the Lord of glory appointed over all the luminaries of heaven and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth, become conductors of the days and the nights, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit with all the chariots of heaven." Now, when you look at the time-lapse photography, you see that all of the luminaries, including the sun and the moon, all the planets, all the constellations, all the Mazzaroth, they all move in sync with one another in slow rotation around Polaris. And Polaris is the only star that is fixed. And all the other wandering stars, they do not move in circle around the sun, but they all move in circle around Polaris. And Enoch, as he says here, that all of the stars, including the sun and the moon, they appear over and above the earth. The face of the earth is what it's described at. And in Psalms 19, it speaks about the sun moving, from the ends of the earth. But anyways, so in the chapters 70 through 84, the first portion is dedicated to the great luminary and the movement of the great luminary, which is the sun. And Enoch describes the beginning of this motion with the sun found between what is called the third and the fourth gate of heaven. And I explain this in my book I go chapter by chapter, verse by verse. I explain it with illustrations and also with the Mazzaroth and how it is that the sun, with each one of the different months, it is connected to a particular portion of what is the zodiac. And so the sun will move through the zodiac and the signs of the zodiac over the course of the year. And so Enoch describes this motion, and he describes the beginning of the year with the earth, with the sun located directly over the equator, and that the vernal equinox, that when the sun is located over the equator, it divides the night and the day equally in 12-hour proportions. And so after the vernal equinox, the sun then moves for 91 days northward towards the Tropic of Cancer. And as you said, when it reaches the Tropic of Cancer for what is the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, it will then reverse course and start heading back down towards the equator. And that is the northern limit. On the summer solstice, which, these megalithic cities that were created by the fallen angels and the giants, they have this marked, and they celebrate this as one of the natural holy days, the solstices and the equinoxes. And the reason they are able to align and connect and to see visually in observation as to what is occurring is not because it's the Earth spinning once every 24 hours and once every year around the sun that creates this movement. It's the movement of the sun back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn that creates the equinoxes, the solstices, as well as the months of the year. And so, after it reaches the summer solstice, the Tropic of Cancer, on June 21st, it will reverse course and for the next 91 days begin heading back towards the equator. It will go through the 6th, 5th, and 4th gate of heaven, and then reaching the equator, that begins the season of fall. And the autumnal equinox is when the day and the night are again equally divided. And Enoch explains this. And then the sun will move over the outer portion of what is the flat earth plane, or the outer perimeter, or the southern latitudes towards Australia, Brazil, South Africa. And so that's when it crosses the equator, that begins spring and summer for those that are living in southern latitudes. But because it's moving away from northern climates, that's what starts our fall and our winter. And so the sun moves for 91 days from the equator to the winter solstice, or the Tropic of Capricorn. And once it reaches this point, that is the height of summer for people living in southern latitudes, but it is the shortest day of the year, and the winter solstice, December 21st, for those that are living in northern latitudes. And then the sun reaching its southern limit, or its outer limit, it will reverse course and for the next 91 days move back towards the equator. And so these two extremes, the summer and the winter solstice, are marked as occasion for determining, the time to plant, the time to harvest, the time to rest. All these things are marked by the movement of the sun and the occurrences of the solstices and the equinoxes. Because as I said, the vernal equinox begins spring. The summer solstice begins summer. The autumnal equinox begins fall. And the winter solstice begins winter. And so it's the sun moving back and forth over the face of the earth between these 2 points that causes the seasons and causes the months and the movement of the sun through the various houses of the zodiac. One last point, and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. The fact that the sun is, in essence, doing this movement, and it's not the earth which is moving at these extraordinary speeds and circling, revolving in orbit and moving around the sun, that causes these motions or these visual observations. And that can be determined by what is visibly apparent on this summer solstice. When the sun reaches the Tropic of Cancer, we have what is called the midnight sun phenomenon. And for those that live in northern latitudes near the Arctic Circle, when the sun reaches the Tropic of Cancer, it will actually circle for 72 hours. For 3 days, it will remain above the horizon and above the mountains. And one will actually see it rising, in the east, moving across the skies in the west, and then circling back in the north and back to the east for sunrise in the morning. But it will never dip below the mountains and never dip below the horizon. So you can actually see the sun doing this circular movement over these 72 hours before it starts heading back southward towards the equator. And, when it reaches the other side of the world, the Arctic region is in night for almost 6 months. And that's because the sun is, at its extremes further away from the Arctic Circle and northern latitudes. And the same happens for, people that are living in extreme southern latitudes on the summer solstice, that they are not witness to, the sunrise and may not see the sun for several days. And so this is a phenomenon which anybody can go and see for themselves, verify that the sun is indeed moving in such manner. And that, again, is unexplainable according to the solar system Copernican model for understanding world. And so it's just another confirming witness. And one final thing, the dynamics of water. Water cannot adhere to a ball. If you pour water onto a ball, it will drip off. And I know they attribute gravity as to being the secret glue that holds all the world's oceans to, the bottom of the world. But how does this secret glue allow, birds and butterflies to fly against this extraordinary power it has to hold all the oceans of the world to the face of the earth, and allow, an air balloon or to just freely float up into the air? And yet, it supposedly is holding back all these millions of cubic feet of water to the earth. It just does not make any sense. And so when you begin to look at things like that, and you realize that water must be contained in a basin held on all sides by a pool or a pond or a lake or an ocean, then, the whole idea that we're living on a globe, that the earth is a sphere, and that there's, at the equator, the ocean mounts miles high in a curve. It's just not plausible. But let me turn it back over to you guys for, commentary.
Yeah, more questions. Well, a couple of things, and again, I'm representing the camp of, I'm not there. I'm listening to get, more information. One of the things that I do know, though, that we know for a fact is the way things operate in the sky and the way the sun and the moon and all the stars operate that we can clearly see with our eyes, it does not match with our current calendar. Because, we're getting ready to go into the 70th Jubilee as you go back and you read, from Moses' time forward. And the calendar has been changed multiple times. I believe really two. We originally had the Enochian calendar, and I think we probably carried with that all the way up until the Julian calendar. And then Julius Caesar pulled us off. And Zen, if I'm wrong, then correct me by all means. And then after that, once we get the Catholic Church fired up and, unbridled, then we have what we have now, which is the Gregorian calendar, which was Pope Gregory. So we know for a fact that we have been pulled away from what the original way for us to monitor the seasons in time was. Like I just looked here, I was typing some stuff in as you were talking just to look it up. And the spring equinox, actually, the date of the spring equinox is Thursday, March 20th, 2025. And we had a guest on by the name of Tom Noss. Oh, I'd like to have Tom back, actually.
Yeah.
One of our first video guests that we had. He is really good in the Jubilean area. And the Jubilee, I don't know when in March it's going to start, but I would probably guess that it would probably be Thursday, March 20th, because it just makes the most sense, because it seemed like, the ancient Israelites and Hebrews beyond that, they all started their year the start of their year was in spring, right? Because you would go spring and then summer and then
Right.
fall and then winter. And we know that the spring equinox date right here in front of me is March 20th, 2025. Now, I want to kick it over to you for any commentary of anything I said to correct anything, or if you got thoughts around anything.
Yeah, this is a very important part of coming to understand the true biblical cosmology as well. And this was a very important issue that I also wrote about in the Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. The calendar issue and what Enoch describes in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries is also very important for understanding how the Levitical feast days are determined. Because, and as you said, in ancient times, and still a lot of nations in the world, their calendars are marked by both the sun and the moon. And as we were talking about in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, Enoch breaks down the motions of first the sun and the moon, the sun being the greater luminary, the moon being the lesser luminary. And then he describes also the movements of the planets and the Mazzaroth, the constellations, and includes them as part of what is this heavenly clockwork system. And when you understand what Enoch is describing about these motions, about these movements, and that it is the sun which creates and determines the day, and also what are the seasons, as I said, 91 days from the vernal equinox, that's the summer solstice. 91 days from that is back to the autumnal equinox. Those four, the equinoxes and the solstices, they create the seasons of the year. And the sun, the 24-hour motion of it moving from east to west, north, and then back east to the point of origin, that creates the length of a day. But it is the moon which determines and how the moon or what is the lunation or the cycle of the moon as it goes through its four phases. It is the moon which determines the first day, or what is called Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month. And then it is its four quarterly cycles, which interestingly are divisible by 7 days. It is this cycle which determines the Sabbath. And so we have been creating, and I'm actually about to start working on the calendar for the next upcoming year. But in truth, the weeks and the months are determined by the moon as well as the Sabbaths. And it is the intercalation, which is the mergence of these two calendar systems, a 364-day solar calendar and a 354-day lunar calendar. And then what the intercalation is, which is just every 3 years thereabouts, you will have to add a 13th month on the lunar calendar, which is called Adar 2. And that will resync these two calendar systems back in tangent with one another. And this is called the metatonic cycle. And it's very simple that once you add this 13th month, it will also bring the dates and the seasons back in alignment with what is the barley harvest, which the barley harvest is very important for the beginning of Passover, and also the celebration of first fruits, which is on the 16th of Nisan after the Sabbath of unleavened bread. But those days, like the 15th of the month of Abib or Nisan, when unleavened bread is celebrated. And in the 7th month, Tishri, when Sukkot, or the Feast of Tabernacles, is celebrated, every 15th of the month is a full moon. So when you understand how the calendar truly works, it, again, in order to celebrate Passover, Pesach, Sukkot, all these main feasts, which are, 3 of the most important according to the Levitical holy days, one must understand how it is that the movements, the luminaries, are moving above the earth, and that in fact it is the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets which are moving and not the earth. And in the Targum, where it is attributing, and the Lord said, let there be light, and to enlighten above. And at once there was light, and the Lord beheld the light. It was good. The Lord divided between the light and the darkness. And the Lord called the light day, and he made it that the inhabitants of the world might labor by it. And the darkness he called night. And he made it that in it the creatures might have rest. And it was evening, and it was morning the first day. Now the attribute, as far as the creation of the luminaries, it says, according to them, and the Lord said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to distinguish between the day and the night, and let them be for signs and for festival times, and for the numbering by them, the account of days, and for the sanctifying of the beginning of the months, and the beginning of the years, and the passing away of the months, and the passing away of the years, the revolutions of the sun, the birth of the moon, and the revolvings of the seasons. Our current Gregorian calendar, and even the Julian calendar, which preceded that, it locked down Sabbath, and it has Sabbath occurring every 7 days, which, according to the Enochian lunar solar calendar, that is not how Sabbath is determined. According to the true calendar, which Enoch describes, that this 354-day lunar calendar and this 364-day solar calendar, that every 3 years you have to add this 13th month in order to realign them. That's what brings the feasts, the Levitical feast days. The moon determines when those feasts are celebrated. Because as I said, it's every 15th in the sun and every 15th of Tishri. Those are on a full moon day, night. And that calendar only can be explained and understood when you understand how the Enochian lunar solar calendar works. And one other thing, just to confirm that this is the calendar that the Israelites were using even during the Exodus. We have the story of the march on Jericho, which it says that they marched for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, they blew the shofar 7 times. The walls came crumbling down. On that 7th day, the walls came crumbling down. Well, the only way that the Most High would not be breaking his Sabbath for having the Israelites march over these 7 days is if the beginning of the march happened on the first of what is the lunar month, or Rosh Chodesh. And we have, in fact, this being stated, that in Jasher chapter 88, it tells us that the march occurred on the head of the month, Rosh Chodesh, the 2nd month. And they marched on that day, Rosh Chodesh, and then for the next 6 days. And then after, they celebrated the Sabbath on the 8th day. And so again, the lunar solar calendar that is described in Enoch is the calendar that the ancients used. And I'll share a passage with you after I get you to comment, which confirms that this indeed was the truth.
No, go ahead. Please share the passage.
Okay. This is from what is called the Perk de Rabbi Eleazar, which the Perk is just of the book of Rabbi Eleazar Hyrcanus, which he was the high priest during the time when the Messiah was walking in the flesh. And he was the high priest that was murdered in what is the fourth book of Maccabees. But anyways, this is a passage that's found in that book. It says, let me take a sip of water real quick.
We're putting Zen to the test
28th
today.
of Elul.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Did
Zen.
you want to say?
No. I just said we were putting your voice box to the test today, brother. So go right ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
No,
voice-
don't apologize. You're fine.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's so good to talk to you, brother. Don't worry about it at all. I'm just happy to be here listening to my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys and your patience and the listening audience as well. I know my voice has been challenged since I left the hospital, but it says, on the 28th of Elul, the sun and the moon were created. The number of the years, months, days, and nights, the terms, seasons, cycles, and intercalation were before the Holy One, blessed be he. And he intercalated the years, and afterwards he delivered the calculations to the first man in the Garden of Eden, as it is said, this is the calculation for the generations of Adam. The calculation of the world is therein for the generations of the children of Adam. And Adam handed on the tradition to Enoch, who was initiated in the principle of intercalation. And he intercalated the year, as it is said, and Enoch walked with God. Enoch walked in the ways of the calculation concerning the world which God had delivered to Adam. And so here we're told that Adam received this calendar system from the Most High. He explained it to Enoch. Enoch wrote it down in principle. And this is what I'm talking about as far as the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, because Enoch describes these two calendars, the lunar and the solar calendar, and how you merge them together with a 13th month. And as I said in that book that I wrote, it explains all this in great detail. But continuing with the passage. And Enoch delivered the principle of intercalation to Noah, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation, and he intercalated the year, as it is said, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter. Seed time refers to the Tekapha or Tishri. The harvest refers to the Tekapha of Nisan, or the cold refers to the month of Tebet, and heat refers to the Tammuz, the month of summer in season, and winter in its season. The counting of the sun is by day, and the counting of the moon is by night. They shall not cease. Noah handed on the tradition to Shem, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation. He intercalated the years, and he was called a priest, as it is said, and Melchizedek, the king of Salem, was a priest of God Most High. Was Shem the son of Noah a priest? But because he was the firstborn, and because he ministered to his God by day and by night, therefore was he called a priest. Shem delivered the tradition to Abraham, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation, and he intercalated the year. And he also was called a priest, as it is said, the Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Abraham delivered the tradition to Isaac, and he was initiated in the principle of intercalation. And he also intercalated the year after the death of our father Abraham, as it is said, And it came to pass after the death of Abraham that God blessed Isaac, his son. Because he had been initiated in the principle of intercalation and had intercalated the year, therefore he blessed him with the blessings of eternity. Isaac gave to Jacob all these blessings and delivered to him the principle of intercalation. When Jacob went out of the Holy Land, he attempted to intercalate the year outside the Holy Land. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, Jacob, thou hast no authority to intercalate the year outside the land of Israel, because they had been taken hostage. Let me continue. And God appeared unto Jacob again when he came to Padan Aram and blessed him. Why again? Because the first time he was revealed to him, he prevented him from intercalating the year outside the Holy Land. But when he came to the Holy Land, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, Jacob, arise, intercalate the year as it is said. And God appeared unto Jacob again and blessed him. I'm almost done with this passage.
This is interesting.
Because he was initiated in the principle of intercalation, and he blessed him with the blessing of the world, Jacob delivered to Joseph and his brethren the principle of intercalation, and they also intercalated the year in the land of Egypt. When Joseph and his brethren died, the intercalation ceased from Israel in Egypt, as it is said, and Joseph had died and all his brethren in all that generation. This is when the calendar system got lost to Israel, when they were under the authority of Egypt and under Joseph's rule there in Egypt. Just as the intercalations were diminished from the Israelites in the land of Egypt, likewise in the future will the intercalations be diminished at the end of the fourth kingdom, until Elijah, be he remembered for good, shall come. And that's talking about us, because Enoch and Elijah are the two witnesses of Revelation 11. And so we're talking about the fig tree generation. But indeed, the calendar system has been lost. Be he remembered for good. Just as the Holy One, blessed be he, was revealed to Moshe and Aaron in Egypt, likewise in the future will he be revealed to them at the end of the fourth kingdom. As it is said, and the Lord spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of the months, which I'll explain that as well. Because remember, there in Israel, they still celebrate Tishri as the beginning of the year, which is the seventh month. And that actually begins with the vernal equinox and what is the fall season. But, when the Most High gave this calendar system back to the Israelites through Moshe and Aaron, he told them to change, instead of the seventh month beginning the beginning of the year, that it would be again the first month, the month of Abib, which means green ears, or the month of Nisan, which Nisan means miracles. And that's when, they were delivered from their bondage. And that's when the Exodus happened. This month shall be unto you the beginning of the months. What is the significance of the word saying, say to them? Till now, the principle of intercalation was with me. Henceforth, it is your right to intercalate thereby the year. Thus were the Israelites wont to intercalate the year in the Holy Land. When they were exiled to Babylon, they intercalated the year through those who were left in the Holy Land. And when they were all exiled, and there were not any Jews left in the Holy Land, they intercalated the year in Babylon. This is the last portion, and then I'll explain what all this means. On account of these three things, the year is intercalated on account of the trees, the grass, and the seasons. If two of these signs be available and not the third, they do not intercalate the year. That is to add a 13th month. That is to say, neither because of the trees nor because of the grass. If one sign be available and the other two absent, they do not intercalate the year on account of the seasons. If the seasons of Tibet had occurred on the 20th day of the month or later, they then intercalate the year. But till the 20th day of the month of Tebeth or earlier, they do not intercalate the year. The cycle of intercalation is 19 years, and there are 7 small cycles. This is the metatonic cycle that I'm talking about. Therein, some of these are separated by 3 years, some by 2 years, others are separated by 3 or 2 years, or 3 by 3 and 3 years, the orders of the cycle. The 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th years, there are the 2 sets of these 3 cycles. So every 3rd, 6th, 8th, and 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th year, according to these metatonic cycles, that's when the calendar must be intercalated. It says, on the new moon of Nisan, the Holy One, blessed be He, was revealed to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt. And it was the 15th year of the great cycle of the moon, the 16th year of the intercalation. And He said, henceforth the counting devolves on to you. And so Moshe and Aaron were given this system of intercalation with the Exodus, and that calendar was reestablished with them, which is why we know that when they went on the march in Jericho, that 7 days that they were marching, it began on Rosh Chodesh, and it did not end on Sabbath, but it ended on the day before Sabbath. And on the 8th day, that's when they rested, and they actually celebrated Sabbath.
It's interesting how we started this conversation and where we wound up, because it's funny for me being the outlier here, how I've been digging into something that ties into this, because it's all funny how it all ties together, right? Which is the celestial worship that began after the flood, that picked back up after the flood. And it went all the way through the Fertile Crescent down to Ur, where Abraham came up and all that. And I happened to, in one of our shows, somebody had made a comment about that. I think it was with the book of Jubilees, maybe. And they had mentioned that they were reading the book of Amos. And there was a comment about particularly Kainam, this individual that found this information after the flood, was mentioned in there. And there was a duplicate mention of Amos in Acts by Stephen right before they stoned him.
Yeah.
And he specifically talked about what exactly, Zen, you were just discussing, which is how during the 500 years in Egypt, they had started to worship these false gods, and the false gods seemingly were exactly the same gods that the people in Babylon were worshiping. You know, all these celestial gods, Saturn, you know, and all these types of things, and how the removal of God's people out of there via Moses and Aaron, they were put back onto exactly what you just said, the path of, you know, the original calendar and all of this.
Right.
So it's kind of amazing how everything I've been looking at the last few days is all kind of tying into it with this discussion.
Yeah.
Now, would you say, because I'm a huge fan of the book of Jubilees, is that, what do you make of that book, and how important is it in this discussion?
Yeah, the book of Jubilees is also very important. It also confirms and says in chapter 6 how it would be that, you know, the later generations, that the children of the 12 tribes, that they would lose their way, and that they would start to, you know, they would lose the true calendar, and they would start to worship these false idols, and to celebrate them with blood offering, and that they would engage in even, you know, drinking the blood and engaging in that kind of worship, which is an abomination. But the book of Jubilee also shows us that there is this 360 day solar calendar with the the equinoxes and the solstices, which are called the leaders of that cycle. But that is the 360-day calendar, along with the solstices and equinoxes, is the solar calendar of that portion that Enoch describes with the movements of the great luminary. But then you have to also include what is the movements of the moon and the determination of how Rosh Chodesh establishes the beginning of the month and then the quarterly phases. The first quarter moon is the first Sabbath. The full moon is the second Sabbath. The third quarter moon is the third Sabbath. And the lunar conjunctive moon is the fourth Sabbath. So it always, when you understand how the true calendar works, it is always broken down in such regard. And even the way that the Most High gave them the manna and also the quails, that he gave them a double portion on the sixth day, which the sixth day is the last of the working day right before what is the seventh day, or that day, which is the first, the 8th, the 15th, 22nd, and 29th every month, that these are, related to the Sabbaths. That the way he gave them the hidden manna and also the quail aligns with this particular calendar system. And so, because it's only by this calendar that you have the first day of every month is Rosh Chodesh. Then the next 6 days are the 6 working days leading to the 8th day, which is the first quarter moon. And then you have 6 more working days leading to the 7th day or the 15th day, which is the full moon Sabbath. And so Sabbaths are aligned, and critically important, they are determined by the phases of the moon. And so when you understand that, how to determine when the Levitical feast days should be celebrated, when they should be honored. And the new moon that is closest to the vernal equinox, that is the first month of the year, Abib or Nisan, as we call it. And so it is that pattern that repeats every year. And that heavenly clockwork system has been in place since the creation of the sun, the moon, because all the luminaries were created on the 4th day all together. And they've been repeating this same pattern, this same movement. The sun has been, since their creation, moving back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And it's that movement that creates the seasons. But it's the cycle and the phases of the moon that create the weeks and the months, and when the timing for the celebration of the Levitical feast days. And there's a whole bunch of passages that we can go into at another time, because I know that we'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah. Oh my, about 15, I think, Zen.
Yeah, probably. It's a very in-depth.
Yeah.
As far as study. So I'm willing to do several shows on this with you.
You're a good man, Charlie Brown. Go ahead, Ben. You had something.
Going back to the flat Earth.
Yeah,
I know we kind of.
Well, we kind of did, and we kind of didn't, because I think what I'm putting together here, and again, I want to get both your takes. What I'm putting together here is this is all tied together, because I think the postulation for this from a faith perspective, from where we come from, at least, because there's kind of multiple camps inside the flat Earth community too, right? Yeah. I'm like, it's like that with everything. But from the faith aspect, from us, what I'm understanding, what I'm getting from this is how they're tied together is the concept of a flat Earth is tied into the destruction of the original calendar to pull us away from the tracking of these feasts, because then that helps break down the Sabbaths. It helps break down the worship of God. and it draws everyone away, right? Which is Satan's game. That's what he always does, right?
Yeah.
Am I hitting that on a broad scope correctly, Zen?
Absolutely. Very, very important. So the biblical cosmology and coming to understanding that curvature is non-existent and that it is the sun which moves with the other luminaries around Polaris, that is the true visual observation of how the dynamics of the so-called, if you want to call it a solar system, with the sun being one of those luminaries which move in circle in revolution around Polaris, and that the Earth is not moving, and that it is fixed, and that the luminaries move in circle above the Earth, and that it's not the Earth spinning once daily and annually around the sun, which creates these visual movements and understandings for these motions. Then one can understand that, yes, it was the distortion of cosmology that also led to the distortion of calendar. And the calendar is what completely disrupted, which we are given. The fourth commandment is to honor the Sabbath. Well, how can you do that if you don't know when Sabbath actually occurs?
Yeah.
Because Sabbath, as I said, is determined and correlated to the phases of the moon. And our calendar systems, our contemporary Julian and Gregorian calendar, the one that most of the world goes by, has been divorced from the movement, the phases, and the cycle of the moon. And so one would be at loss for, trying to honor the Sabbath because you can't even figure out what day the Sabbath is.
Yeah.
And it's the same for the Levitical feast days, that as long as we are following this Gregorian and Julian calendar system and the belief that Sabbath occurs once every 7 days perpetually, then you'll never get it right. Well, once in a while, the Sabbath will actually align with, if you are celebrating Sabbath on Saturday or celebrating on Sunday like most Christians do, or if you are celebrating it from Friday sundown to Saturday at sundown, the way that modern Jews do. You'll get it right every once in a while, but for the most part, you're going to be mostly wrong, because Sabbath does not occur every 7 days, but it occurs after the appearance of the waxing crescent, which determines the beginning or the head of the month, Rosh Chodesh. And then after the determination of that beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, with the appearance of the waxing crescent, then every quarterly phase of the moon aligns with Sabbath. Then you have the first quarter moon being the first Sabbath of the month, the full moon being the second Sabbath, the third quarter moon, the third Sabbath, and then the dark moon, the lunar conjunctive moon, being the last Sabbath of the month. And every month works in this same manner. You have the Rosh Chodesh, the appearance of the waxing crescent, the beginning of the month, and then the quarterly phases aligning with Sabbath. And so unless you have and are following a calendar, which helps one to, to translate and to understand where we are, which I think we're one of the very few people that creates a calendar every year for people to look at, to understand and to determine where we are in the true Enochian lunar solar calendar. One just would not be able to really honor the Sabbath or really honor the true holy days, which are the Levitical feast days.
Yeah, you can find that at Zen's website too, sacredwordpublishing.com.
But what I wanted to say, ask, whatever, not no more closet flat earther.
You've been flushed out, my friend.
One thing that I notice, and I don't know if other people notice, but some days the moon will still be up with the sun. If you go outside and you can see, and I'm like, this wouldn't happen on a globe, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's the one of the folks that's watching today, nice lady named Leslie. She said her mind is already exploding, which mine is too, right? Because there's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah.
Right? There's a whole lot of science that goes into this. There's a whole lot of other discussion that goes into this. So it's a lot. And that's why Zen kind of made the comment a second ago. We're gonna have to take this in multiple bites.
But I always like to point that out.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And what's your take on that, Zen? When like the sun and the moon are out at the same time during the day? I mean, just as far as supposedly the moon's on the other side of the globe at night.
Right. Yeah, again, when you understand that the sun and the moon and the planets and the other luminaries are the ones that are moving in circle above the earth, when you go outside, you can visually see that the sun will appear first in our eastern skies. And then it will cross over the course of the day through the south, moving southward. And then once it reaches, high noon, it will then begin moving back towards the western skies, and it will set there. And if you are in a plane, you can actually follow the sun, and it will continue to move towards the north and then back to the east to its point of origin. And the book of Enoch describes this. As I said, the only way one can understand what Enoch is describing in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries is by applying oneself to the observations of these particular movements, because Enoch was taken to where Polaris is, and there looking down upon the face of the earth as what is, the backdrop as a clock, then you could see how it is that the sun and the moon and the other planets and luminaries are described as moving in circle around Polaris. But Polaris is the place that the Most High has established his throne. That is where, and the stars are also equated with the celestial hosts. And so the stars are also the angels in heaven. And I also believe that's part of why Abraham was said that, as you see all these stars, so shall the number of your children born into this world be. Because I do believe that we were part of the administration of the morning star, the sons of God, before we entered into the wombs of our mother. That, as it says in the scriptures, the Most High knew us before we ever entered into the wombs of our mother. That, he knew us before even the foundations of the world were settled, which that's a whole nother show and topic. Pre-existence, election, all that, which we'll go into at some point as well.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be
that's a very important teaching as well. But yeah, the stars are also equated with the angelic hosts.
We could have Zen do a residency on our show for
You're hired, Zen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Literally a show a month.
But more. I think we could probably do more than that, my man. So, and if I want to go one more place. I know that we wanted to keep it to 90 minutes, and we're right about there. And if you don't want to go there, if you want to stop now, that's fine. You just let me know.
It's all good. Whatever you want to do.
So I got a lot of things written down that I want to talk about, and probably what I'm getting ready to go into is in a whole nother show, because we've kind of really only covered the cycle of the moon and the stars, and then how that relates to the calendar. We haven't really even touched the actual design of what effectively would be the earth, and with that, the firmament, right? And all of how all that works together. And that's kind of probably one we'll save for next time. I was going to ask that, but I'm going to save that for next time. But what I think kind of does wrap up this portion of the show, maybe we can go into, is under the flat earth side of the coin. And obviously I know what I've been taught about the solar system. How does the solar system, or is there a solar system? How does that work with the other planets? Are there other planets? How does that all work under the flat earth model?
Great question. And again, it goes back to that passage that I read about how the sun and the moon, the planets and the other stars, they move above the earth, above the face of the earth. And so, and as I said, you can go out and you can watch the sun. It will enter into your field of vision from the east. It will cross across the southern skies until reaching the west. It reaches the vanishing point for what is sunset. And that's not because the earth, is spinning and that the sun then is going over the curvature of the earth. The sun is simply reaching the vanishing point and then moving, circling back towards the north. It will reach the east and the place where it rose for sunrise in the morning. So over the course of night, the sun is actually moving back towards the north and back towards the east till it arrives at the place that it rose that very morning previous. So the next morning it will rise in the same place. It will make its same appearance. It will return over 24 hours back to that point and then rise again and enter our field of vision. And so the earth, and I wrote a whole book about this as well. And you're right, this is several shows in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a book called The Firmament, the Vaulted Dome of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, I take the first 4 days of creation, especially, as is related in not only Genesis, but the Targum, the book of Jubilees. There's a creation account, the book of Jasher, all these different books, the Chronicles of Jeremiah, all these different manuscripts that most people never heard about. Anywhere they gave an account of the creation of the world, it tells you that Elohim established the earth and the heavens before they were destroyed, before they came without form and void. The earth was, in Proverbs it says, it was inscribed upon the oceans of the deep as a circle, and that circle was set upon a square. It tells us, the scriptures tell us, that the earth has 4 corners. And we see that this is exactly what is hidden in plain sight with the Masonic, the compass and the square. It's telling us the same thing, that the earth in truth is a circle inscribed upon a square, and that the true orientation for it, as is also hidden in plain sight, you can find on the flag, the banner of the United Nations, which is the seat of world government. It shows us how the continents are truly situated, and that this map, which is called an azimuthal equidistant projection map, that really is the way that the earth is situated, that it circles around what is described in Isaiah 14 as the Mount of the Congregation. And when you start to study the true structure and the dynamics of the earth, you find that God has established this mountain, this lodestone magnetic mountain in the north. And this mountain is called Mount Olympus, Mount Meru, Mount Zion. It has many different names. The Mount of the Congregation, where the angels gather with the council of the mighty, where the Most High has his meetings with the angels. And the reason he has his meetings there, as I said, is because in the very north, above the Mount of the Congregation, that's where Polaris is. And Polaris is where the Most High has his throne situated, because it is what is called the sides of the north. The sides of the north are the walls of the firmament. They rise from the ends of the earth, the outer perimeter, the outer circle of the earth, towards its apex, towards its pinnacle. And at this zenith, that's where all the firmament comes together. And it is described in Revelation 4 by John as a sea of glass like unto crystal. And so the top of the vaulted dome of the earth is the floor for what is the throne room of the Most High God, and where God has established his throne. And so, and as I said, we can do an entire show on this topic alone, the firmament, and how the study of what the firmament truly is absolutely critical for understanding true biblical cosmology. Because as I said, the first 4 days of creation, you have the earth and the Shamayim being established on the first day. And then on the second day, you have the dry ground appearing, the earth being elevated, above the waters of the deep. And then, the waters being established and the firmament being put into place on the third day, or the second day, the firmament put into place. And then the earth being elevated above sea level. And then on the fourth day, you have the sun and the moon, the stars and the other luminaries being placed into orbit within the firmament that is fitted to the circle of the earth. So the sun, the moon, the stars, they are very small in comparison to the circle of the earth, and also to the firmament that was put into place around the circle of the earth, which the earth in true cosmology and biblical terms, it is fashioned like a snow globe. And, that's visually, that is what we are living in as far as the world. The firmament divides the waters above from the waters below, which is why the skies are blue. But it is the sun and the moon and the stars which move in orbit in what they call the seven heavens, that each one of these, the sun, the moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, they all orbit, they move in circle in one of these seven heavens, which is a whole nother, topic.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. It's just interesting to me because what I'm finding through this discussion, I've heard a couple different things that it's almost as important to advocate for you guys, even if maybe the agreement isn't there and more study needs to be done. But there's a lot of misconception and a lot of, whatever the term would be, bad understanding of what flat Earth actually believes or what the truth is. Because one of the things that I was under the impression of is, well, you guys believe the sun and the moon are flat, and we found out that's not true. And then another one of the myths, maybe that's the best way to put it. One of the other myths is these planets don't exist.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm hearing either. So
those aren't true.
Yeah. So, and which is actually key because we know that because a lot of the Saturn worship, you can't worship something that doesn't exist. Right. So, it gets into a lot of different things and a lot of stuff. So there's been some good understanding from my aspect in my own ignorance today of seeing that there's a lot of bad information on the counter side to flat Earth and a lot of myths there that are not correct. Just as much as it's the other way around.
That's why I say I'm a biblical flat earther.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and again, there are going to be multiple camps inside of there.
Yes, and for me, I go by that, and you open a whole book when you say that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. You're going to base your thinking and your decision making on the subject on that.
Yeah,
which is where I am at too on the counter side. Right. I don't care. I don't care what Kyle believes. I care what God has to say.
Yeah.
What's the truth? I just want to know the truth. And if the truth, I've already had enough of my core get rocked, over the last 4 years of what I believe to be truth. I'm ready to have the rest, done the same way because I want to strip all of the false teaching out of there and I want to learn the truth.
Yeah.
So, Zen, man, this has been fantastic today. We really appreciate your time and appreciate you coming on the show, brother.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, and I'm so glad my voice held out, but I definitely look forward to follow up.
Yeah, man.
We'll definitely do a show on the firmament, continue on the topic of biblical cosmology.
Yeah.
We can do one on pre-existence at some point.
I wrote that down.
Certainty, whatever you guys want to get into.
Well, that's what we're going to get into now. If you guys enjoyed today, we had a weird glitch too. I don't know. There's gremlins today, or Satan's trying to derail the train. But haha, the joke's on him. Get behind me, punk. Because we reloaded and came right back in. We did lose the chat feed for a second, so all the new chats are coming in, but we lost the history. But that's okay. I've been kind of talking to everybody as we were going.
Yeah.
But if you guys enjoyed this show and you guys enjoyed our talk with Zen, go check out the other talk we had with Zen. Man, when did we talk to you last?
It was
Zen?
in May.
Was it May? It was all the way back in May.
Yeah, it was a while.
But
yeah.
It was kind of right before I think you got sick. So,
Yeah, it was.
yeah. So, but on the 29th of this month, we are going to have yet another live stream that is going to be HD foilers only. So you are going to have to be an HD member if you guys want to listen to that one. But that is going to be with Zen, and it's going to be with Dr. Joy Pugh, all of our friend. And that is actually going to get into the serpent seed. So that's where we're going to hit that one. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
yeah, man. We're gonna keep you busy, dude. Getting out of that hospital, you're gonna think, man, these guys are keeping me busy.
There's a lot to say, a lot to discover, and I'm just glad you guys are open-minded to
man,
to hear things that most people are unwilling to listen to. So
yeah, for sure, dude. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Brother, it has been so good to talk to you today. It's so good to hear your voice. I know we couldn't work out the tech to actually see you, but we love you, man, and we're glad that you're on the mend, and you seemingly got stronger as the talk went on. You were hammering it good, so that's awesome, dude. So thanks so much, brother.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate all of you and your listeners, and look forward to the next time. We'll definitely talk to you on the 29th with Dr. Joy.
Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and clip the stream off, and if you want to hang around, we'll say goodbye to you really quick, pray with you, and make sure you're good there, man. So, all right. Well, with that, we will bid you adieu until next time on The Foil. Take care.
Bye.